There were more international reactions, including from Britain's Minister for Africa, who discredited the just concluded Burundi presidential election. Grant Sharp said the Burundian government had failed to ensure the necessary conditions for credible, inclusive and peaceful elections, and as such, the United Kingdom would not consider them legitimate. He called for calm and restraint from all sides, saying the significant progress Burundi had made since the end of the civil war was in danger of being lost. Right, and for an in-depth discussion on the Burundi elections, we're now joined here in studio by Ambassador Boaz Mbaya, an international relations expert and executive director for the Center for Policy Analysis. Ambassador, thanks very much for joining us. Now, Burundi proceeded with the presidential polls, and that's in spite of the calls from the AU and other international players to postpone the vote. Do you expect this to impact the legitimacy of the election outcome?
Well, you see, it's a national exercise, and that's how I think President Pierre Nkurunziza understood it. But Burundi is not living in isolation. It's part of the international community. There are certain standards that must be met, really. So it would be very difficult for Burundi to convince the international community that the elections were free and fair. It will also be very difficult to convince the international community that the environment was conducive to free and fair elections because of the violence, the bombings, the shootings that have been experienced. So it is quite a difficult task for the president when he gets his third term.
So then what response should we expect from the East African community, from the African Union, and indeed from the rest of the international community in the wake of Burundi's apparent show of defiance?
The East African community has been seized with this problem for quite some time. They've tried to mediate. I think the African Union too, the United Nations as well. The point is that Burundi is a very poor country. It's part of the East African community, and it is going to be a big challenge for the community to try and unravel the process. I think what should continue to happen is efforts should be made to mediate the problem between the President Nkurunziza and the opposition, so that even if he comes in for a third term, there should very quickly be elections again, which will be all-inclusive, to try and resolve the issue, so that we don't go back to the ethnic factor that has beset the country for many, many centuries.
But Ambassador, those mediation efforts you're talking about collapsed over the weekend after representatives from the government failed to show up. So can the talks be salvaged even after the elections?
I want to believe it is possible, and I don't think Pierre Nkurunziza is going to shut the door completely to the East African partner states. If he does so, then he risks international isolation. I think we need to create a situation where the opposition and the government come together to discuss the issue and try and find a way out. It has been 10 peaceful years, reasonably peaceful years in Burundi. We should continue to have that peace continue. So yes, I think the talks may have collapsed, perhaps because of the elections, but I don't think the East African community is going to let the matter lie there.
Right, and obviously we know that Pierre Nkurunziza is expected to win this election. We've heard from the US declaring sanctions on Burundi, the UK saying they don't consider those elections credible. So what does Nkurunziza then need to do to avoid international isolation in light of the controversy surrounding his re-election bid?
He is facing a very serious challenge, in my opinion. And if he doesn't act correctly, it will be very difficult for him to get out of the quagmire he sent himself in. I believe he has to open the doors for negotiations with the opposition. He has to draw up a program to say, look, this was a problem, we had to deal with it, and we can now sit down as Burundians to try and tackle the problem and get an all-inclusive solution. He does not have a choice. The international community is watching, and it depends on exactly how he's going to deal with the opposition, with the situation in the country, and also with the efforts that have been made by the East African community partner states to try and resolve the issue. So I think I don't think he's a fool. I think he's going to try and open the door for negotiations.
All right. Ambassador Boaz Mbaya joining us here in Nairobi. Many thanks.